Welcome to Carolina Creepers and Oddities Radio, the podcast that will give you chills and keep you up at night. There are 31 days until Halloween, and what better way to celebrate the spookiest night of the year than with a daily dose of terror? That's why we're bringing you the 31-day countdown to Halloween. Each day we'll be posting a minisode which features a different short story to get you in the spooky spirit. Whether you're a fan of classic horror or you're looking for something new and terrifying, we've got you covered. Some of our stories are works of fiction, while other tales take place in and around North and South Carolina. So what are you waiting for? Join us on our countdown to Halloween and prepare to be scared. So gather around, my dear listeners, and let's tell some scary stories. But be warned, once you start listening, there's no turning back. The 31-day countdown to Halloween begins now. Welcome back to our countdown. I'm Chris, your host on this spooky month-long journey to Halloween Day. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's selection, Dr. Oddfellow's collection of horror. Today is October 18th. Today's adventure is a story that was presented as one of the Halloween Horror Nights Haunted Tales narrated by Matt Flood on Spotify. It was based on Bugs, Eaten Alive Haunted House for Halloween Horror Nights 31. Here for your enjoyment is Spirits of the Coven. A reporter draws unwitting customers to a speakeasy, hiding something far more sinister than bootlegged beverages. Music is life, Fred remembered Walter saying that the first night they met. It's just one of those things musicians say until this moment. Watching and listening to Walter play out the last few seconds of his life, it was as if every note, every stanza, every movement created only the definition of life. Walter's finger stabbed the keys and the music bled out. It was the middle of the day, but this place had no windows to allow something so natural. At sunset, it looked like a speakeasy. The bar, the tables, the chairs, fancied paper walls, and some simple decorations hung up for Halloween celebration that night. Even the beautiful onlookers around the room, with their knees exposed and dressed in that enticing flapper style, made the scene familiar for Fred Lafferty, the well-loved social columnist. But this wasn't a normal gin joint, and those weren't flappers. Walter continued to play, turning upbeat tune into desperate plea. It was a cry for mercy aimed at the poised figure casting her shadows on him, the Queen. Fred couldn't allow himself to focus on her, on the green and gold dagger he held inches from Walter's heart. She stood just off-center, as if she belonged in that waking moment after a nightmare. Fred was the betrayer, and Walter the betrayed. He had enticed his friend to come with him, to possibly pick up another gig in town. It had taken time to convince Walter due to his fear of the city's boss who owned the most of the speakeasies. But Fred continued to convince him that in this place he had nothing to fear from the boss. Walter struck the last key, and its sustained bounced around the room, looking for an escape. Fred knew there wasn't hope, but still something about the song had seemed almost triumphant. "She can move," Walter said. It hadn't been a question. In fact, he almost managed confidence. The dagger pointed toward his side, aimed toward his heart. "She can live," Walter's voice broke for the first time. Fred allowed himself to focus on the Queen, holding the dagger to Walter's back. A headpiece covered the top of her head. 5 ornate daggers protruded from it like pointed rays of light, forming a crown, and a single all-seeing eye peered out from its center. When she spoke, it ended the lingering effect of the song. "You play with passion. I promise you your mother could live." Walter lifted his shoulders away from the keys, closed his eyes, and visibly tensed. "But, my sweet musician, so full of life, I feel like I should tell you at least something true before you die." Walter didn't flinch. Fred wished he could look away. "Soon after you left your mother this morning, one of my sisters of the Coven visited her, and your mother was already dead." Walter screamed, but was cut off within seconds as the ceremonial blade slid between his ribs and found his heart. The Queen withdrew the blade and quickly opened his throat from ear to ear. She lifted Walter's body, and it dropped into a brass tub that had been waiting beside them. The hags lurking in the shadows stamped in and began to squeeze and turn the body to collect the blood. "Pay close attention, sisters," the Witch Queen wiped her blade, and it disappeared into her sleeve. "Passion ripens what is in the blood, but it's useless until you sever it from hope. Blood is not the ingredient, but the conduit to the soul. We only use the finest of ingredients." The flappers standing around nodded and bowed their heads. The Queen finally turned to Fred Where's the next one? He'll be here soon, my source from the inside of the outfit told me. The hitman was to find me last night. I left a trail to bring him here. The hags finished up with Walter's body and carried the tub along with the barrel of unused pieces back towards the elevator. Fred had never gone down that elevator, but couldn't help but wonder. The location and the password of the speakeasy was a well-kept secret until the Queen recruited Fred to encode it into his column. Over the past few months, he had suddenly built the allure of this place by writing about lost sense of secrecy in the drab environment at most of the local speakeasies. Fred's relationship with this place had become publicly known. Within the last week or so, he had immediately become the boss's #1 target. One of the flappers walked into the bar. He's here. We will use the lounge. The Queen quickly gave her directions to her sisters, and 2 hags grabbed Fred by his hands to lead him. The hag's hands were rough, and one of them rubbed their sharp nails up and down his forearm as they led him to the elevator. She looked up at him as if she were nervous or like someone starving. Fred had seen the flappers take them down to the lounge and knew what it was by reputation, so he expected some of what he saw and heard. Inviting seats and music drifting in from a radio hidden in one of the side rooms or halls, but it was unpleasantly musty and somehow felt dim and filthier than the main bar and gambling hall. Fred found it a little hard to breathe. Another brass tub was set up in the middle of the room, and the Queen stood by the door. The whole coven took their assigned places, and Fred waited beside the tub. The whole company waited in silence. It seemed to be an hour or more. Fred's back ached from keeping his feet planted and unmoving for so long. He made himself go to the place in his mind where he wrote. He was considering new ideas for his next column, and then he heard the creaking of the elevator cables echoing from beyond the door. One set of boots stepping on the soft floor. The silence followed for only a moment, for a split second. Fred saw the silhouette of the hitman who had come to kill him. There was a metallic ring, and the man pulled the knife and hurled it at Fred. It sliced through the air, stopping only inches from Fred's chest, and fell harmlessly to the ground. Fred continued to stand, his arms and jaw shaking from the thrill of it. "Welcome," said the Queen to the hitman, who was now showing fury and confusion on his face. The room full of flappers stood. The hitman stared in horror and disbelief at the unbelievable sight. Then, to his credit, he lunged at the Queen, perceiving that she was the greatest threat. But she caught him by his throat and lifted him above her head. What an intoxicating man. The green and gold dagger flashed and struck through his chest. She then dropped the dead man's body into the tub, as easily removed his right arm. Once again, the hags did their work, and the Queen referenced the room. Passion, a lust for something, anything. Find it, then crush it. This man loved power, so I made him feel his power, then I took it. Do likewise. I'm done with you now, Fred. The Queen turned her face towards him. I'm still useful, Fred said. All men are. The Queen turned, and the same 2 hags that had taken him below to the lounge once again grabbed him. This time they both scraped at his arms, pressed them between them as they plunged through an open door to the other side of the lounge. They entered the underground that held the truth of this place. This coven had progressed with the times. They had disposed of their cast iron cauldrons and ancient potions. The Queen had led them into this new age of power by innovating their methods. Modern distilling equipment created new possibilities, and now the Queen had been able to accomplish so much more than her predecessors. Her magic had grown beyond anything her sisters could have believed. Barrels filled the tunnels. Pig carcasses stuffed of the witch's brew were piled and ready to be loaded onto mining carts that would find their way out of the city and into the world beyond. This was the Queen's domain. Fred was brought before the Queen. She stepped into a massive conduit overgrown by sickly vines and roots. The roundish room had dark alcoves cut into the walls with marks on the walls as if hundreds of fingernails had tried to claw their way through. The full realization of what was coming to hit them. You can't crush me like you crushed those men. I'm a calculating man. I don't give in to passions. I don't have hope that you can crush. It's true that you would make for a very weak brew. You are far more fun to look at. In fact, my sisters and I have anticipated this moment for some time now. You'll always be aware, but from here on, you will be my puppet. Another hag suddenly appeared with a hot branding iron leveled to meet Fred's face. The hags holding him grabbed his head, and he found himself unable to move once more. Hot iron approached his face. He saw a glowing symbol on its end, and then he felt the searing pain pressing to his face, over his mouth, and hold until the heat spread across his skin. He could smell his flesh burning. As he screamed, the queen began her spell. It came over him like thick mud running over his head and covering his body until it seemed to crawl into his eyes. The heat increased, and while still fully aware, he felt his own soul, the thing that made him alive, burn inside his chest and then burst forth through his ears. There was no pain comparable. Fred's mind exploded and his body was lost. It was torture without any ability to fight back. His limbs, senses, and even heart became an extension of the Queen's will. But he was still there, still inside. Well, folks, that's it for today's mini-sode. We hope you enjoyed the story we shared with you. If you're looking for more spooky content, be sure to check out our website at www.carolinacreepersoddities.com or follow us on social media. Please make sure to rate our show on whichever podcast platform you're using, as it is very helpful to us. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another round of Halloween terror. In the meantime, stay safe, stay spooky, and have a happy Halloween season.